This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
We have a very interesting topic this morning. We're going to be learning about Megillas Rus, and we're going to be learning an astounding chiddush of the Rogotchover gain. But before we get there, we're going to break up the shiur into three parts. We have one introductory part, we have the main body, which is going to be the chiddush of the Rogotchover, and then a closing section. Okay. Megillas Rus, we know the minhag is to lane Megillas Rus on Shavuos, and various reasons are brought down for the minhag of laning Megillas Rus on Shavuos. The Avudraham brings down two reasons. Number one, the story of Rus took place mitchilas katsir sa'irim ad kolos katsir sa'irim, from the beginning of the harvest till the end of the harvest. That's when the story took place. Right? If we were to put a timeline on the story, it took place from the beginning of the harvest to the end of the harvest. Shavuos is during that period of time. So since the story took place Shavuos time, the minhag is to lane Megillas Rus on Shavuos. Another reason that Avudraham brings down is Rus. She entered into her covenant, into a bris with the Ribbon Shalom, just like as on Shavuos we entered into a covenant with the Ribbon Shalom. So that's also a reason to lane Megillas Rus Shavuos time. Also,
what were the covenants?
Rus entered into a bris with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She was Megayer. So Klal Yisrael, during the time at Matan Torah, they were Megayer. So that's another reason to lane Megillas Rus on Shavuos. And of course, the Yerushalmi tells us that David HaMelech was born on Shavuos. He passed away on Shavuos. And Megillas Rus tells us about the ancestry of David HaMelech. Right? It ends right, V'yishai hoyled es David. So therefore, since Megillas Rus is all about the yichus of David HaMelech, right? That's why Shmuel wrote Sefer Rus. He wrote it as a psak halacha that David HaMelech is a kosher yid. So therefore, it's another reason to lay in Megillas Rus on Shavuos. However, if we read the Medrash, we're going to have a very, very difficult problem. Look in number one. The Medrash tells us, Amar Rabbi Zeira, Megillah zu. This Megillah, ein ba like tumah v'lay tara. Doesn't have the halachos of impurity, of purity, v'lay yisr v'heter. V'lama nichtava. So why did Hashem write? Why is it in the Torah? Right? There are no halachos. There's no tumah. There's no tara. There's no isr. There's no heter. Right? The Megillas are not supposed to be history books. They're not the beautiful documents. It's supposed to teach you something. So if there are no halachos in Megillas Rus, why do we have it? Says the Medrash, v'lama nichtava l'lamedcha kama sachar toiv l'goyim lechasadim. To teach you how much reward you get for doing chesed.
There is always an halacha about
okay. So actually there are hundreds of halachas that you learn out from Megillas Rus. But nevertheless, the Medrash tells us all these halachas are not really the main part of the Megillah. The main part of the Megillah is to teach me the schar of chesed. So I was bothered by the following question. If the purpose of Megillas Rus is to teach you the schar of chesed, you got the wrong yomtiv. I mean, this is the last yomtiv that we're interested in teaching the schar of chesed. Shavuos is what? So yomtiv of Kabbalah Satira. We stay up all night not delivering packages for Tamchei Shabbos, right? We stay up all night learning. It's the yomtiv of Talmud Torah, right? It's not the yomtiv of Bikur Cholim, Achnasas Orchim. Maybe you want to do that Sukkos, do it Sukkos time. You want to do a Pesach, you have Mois Chitim. Purim, you have Matan Torah. Shavuos is Talmud Torah. So why in the world would we be laning a Megillah that the entire purpose is not to teach me any halachas, is only to teach me the schar of chesed? What does the schar of chesed got to do with the yomtiv of Talmud Torah? Okay, so we're going to give two interesting terutzim. Okay, number one is, we find in Kama Mekayimos B'Shas, many places, that when the Gemara tells us about Talmud Torah, it always groups it together with another mitzvah. Very often, dozens of places. You have when the Gemara tells you about Talmud Torah, it's always in conjunction. It's always joined together with Gemilas Chasadim. For instance, look at number 2. Sha'alu Talmida v'Reb Elazar. Right, Reb Elazar's Talmidim asked him, "Ma yasa adam v'yinatza michele shel Mashiach?" What should a person do if he wants to be spared from the birth pangs of Mashiach? Says the Gemara, "Yasoik b'Torah uv'Gemilas Chasadim." Learn Torah, but Torah is not enough. Torah and Chesed. By the way, the Marsha asks that the Gemara Masechta Shabbos gives us a different eitzah to be spared from the Chedle Shel Mashiach. if you eat 3 sudas on Shabbos, right? It says Nitza mi dina shel Gehenim umi chever shel Mashiach, and from Mochemes Gog uMagog. So the Maharsha asks, it's a stira. The Maharsha says, either one. Either one. But still, you see in this Gemara, the Gemara puts together Yasek b'Torah v'Gemilas Chasadim.
What's theory? You can do both.
You can do both. That's what the Maharsha, you can do both. Or, in the Gemara in Masechta Avodah Zarah, the Gemara tells us, Ashreim Yisrael, Bizman she'oiskim b'Torah u'v'Gemilas Chasadim. When they learn Torah and they do Chesed, Yitzra Maser b'Yadam ve'ein heim Maser b'Yad Yitzram. The Yetzer Hara is delivered in their hands, and they are not delivered into the hands of the Yetzer. Chavetz Chaim explains that the Yetzer Hara has 2 ways of getting a person to sin. Number 1, he confuses your mind. He gets you to think improper things, and he gets your Eivarim to do improper things. So the Chavetz Chaim explains this Gemara that by doing Chesed and by learning Torah, you keep your mind straight. By doing Chesed, you keep your Eivarim straight, and this way the Yetzer Hara has no Shalita. Or another Gemara Masechta Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara says, Rabbi v'Abaye midabeis Eli ka'asu. Rabbi and Abaye, they both were descendants from the house of Eli. And we know the Rebbeinu Shalom took an oath. He said, right, Im yiskaper avoin beis Eli bezevach v'mincha. God took an oath that no descendants from the house of Eli will live long. They will all die young. Right? And Hashem took an oath. He said, their sin will not be forgiven bezevach u'v'mincha. And the Gemara darshans, bezevach u'v'mincha ino miskaper avol miskaper b'Torah u'v'gemilas chasadim. And the Gemara says, Rabbi and Abaye were both descendants of Eli. Rabbi learned Torah, he lived 40 years. He had a richas yamim, maybe he would have died out early. Rabbi learned Torah, he lived till 40. Abaye da'asik b'Torah u'v'gemilas chasadim chaya shitin shnin. He lived 60 years. So again, we see, in order to maximize the full reward of Talmud Torah, you can't say Ein li ela Torah, like the Gemara says in Yavamas Kuftes. Ha'omer ein li ela Torah, afilu Torah ein li. Right? Someone who says, I just have Torah, he doesn't have anything. Right? You have to combine the Torah im gemilas chasad. Okay, another Gemara. Okay? The Gemara says in Bava Kama, Kol ha'oisek b'Torah u'v'gemilas chasadim, zoicha lenachlas shnei shvatim. Right? You get the nachla of Yosef, you get the nachla of Yisachar. In other words, we find B'kama v'chama m'kaymais. Kol ha'omer ein li ela Torah. Torah alone is not enough. It has to be coupled with gemilas chasadim. And that is why, Rabbi Yisai, we find an amazing Gemara. Oh, this is just the introduction. We're going to get into something very lamdish in a few moments. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Shabbos, Amri le Rabbanon le Rabbi Shiur ben Levi. Look at number 6. The Rabbanon said to Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, Asu dardeki ha'idna lebei midrasha. Children came into the base medrash. V'amru mili, and they said words. Za'afilu b'mei Yehoshua ben Nun lo yitmar kvasayu. That such astounding words were not even stated in the times of Yehoshua ben Nun. What did they say? Aleph Beis. They darshan the Aleph Beis. What does Aleph Beis stand for? Right? The letters, right? You open up the Siddur, you look in the beginning, you have the first 2 letters, Aleph Beis, Aleph Bina. Aleph Beis stands for, there's a Gemara. Aleph Bina. Gimel Dalid, Gimel Dalim. Yeah, you hear? Children came in, maybe there's a big share going on. The kids came in, they said, we're going to give you a drasha. No one ever heard such amazing things since the time of Yehoshua ben Nun. What did they say? Aleph Beis, Aleph Bina. Learn. Gimel Dalid, Chesed. Says the Chavetz Chaim, we learn from this Gemara a critical lesson, and that is, the most important thing about being a Jew is not all these little segula dika things that everybody runs after, and these side things, and these tuffle things, and 2 things. The most important thing about being a Jew is, number 1, Aleph Bina, number 2, Gemal Dalim. Right? People get distracted with the with other trimmings. No, these are the 2 ikarim. That's a big chiddush. It's a davar pasha, right? Everybody knows this, but sometimes you have to focus on the fact that the most important thing about being a Jew is Aleph Bina Gemal Dalim. Look what the Chavetz Chaim writes in number 7. V'nuchal l'rois. We can see Gedulas Elo Hashnei Inyanim Shel Torah v'Chesed. The greatness of these 2 mitzvahs that we have, Torah and Chesed. She'al zeh ramaz Hashem Yisparach b'tchilas ha'Aleph Beis. That it was about these 2 mitzvahs that Hashem alluded at the beginning of the Aleph Beis. What does this teach you? Leharois lanu she'elu hashnei devarim heim ha'ikarim harishaynim ba'avodas Hashem yisbarach. These are the two fundamental endeavors in Judaism, not all the other things. Number one is Aleph Bina, right? Number one is Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Number two is Gemal Dalam. Everything else is secondary importance. Nothing else is as important. That's why we find in all these Gemaras that we just listed, in all these 5-6 Gemaras, whenever Shas talks about Talmud Torah, it's always coupled in with Gemilas Chasadim. And in fact, Reb Chaim Vital writes, the same way everybody knows, you have to be Kaveh Itim LaTorah every single day. Reb Chaim Vital writes in the Shari Kedusha, every day a person should say the following: Oy li, woe to me, that I let the day go by, b'li Torah, u'v'li gemilas chasadim. Look at number 7, at the end of the piece, he says, the Chavetz Chaim says, v'chazem atzasi b'sefer Shari Kedusha, the Mareno Reb Chaim Vital, sheha-adam tzarech lehisaynein b'chal yom v'leimar. A person should bemoan the fact every day and say, Oy li, shahalach hayom b'li Torah u'gemilas chasadim. Okay? So we see from here, from all of this, the two most important things are Torah and Chesed, and Kol ha'omer ein li ela Torah, afilu Torah ein li. So perhaps we can suggest that this is a very important reason why we learn Megillas Rus dafka on the Yom Tov of Shavuos. The Yom Tov of Shavuos is a Yom Tov of Kabbalas HaTorah, of Limud HaTorah, lest anyone think, ein li ela Torah. No, you have to remember all of these Ma'amari Chazal. Torah, you want to be safe from Chavli Mashiach, Torah im Gemilas Chasadim. You want to be safe from the Yetzer Hara, Torah with Gemilas Chasadim. You want the Nachash Shnei Shvatim, Torah im Gemilas Chasadim. You want Arichas Yamim, Torah im Gemilas Chasadim. That's by the way, the Achar Kach Matzasi in the Chida writes in his introduction to Sefer Rus, in the 3rd Limud, he writes, Mamish Bekitzer, that the reason we lane Rus on Shavuos is to understand that these are the two Ikarim, Talmud Torah, Im Gemilas Chasadim. Okay, so it's a new reason. It's a new reason for Megillas Rus on Shavuos. One other reason, also this is Mamish, a very big Chiddush. That is, we say in Shemona Esrei every day in the last bracha, you say, Sim Shalom Tova, Bracha Chen Vaz V'Racham Leinu Makoi Salmecha, Barcheinu Avinu. Right? Barcheinu Avinu. Our Father should bless us. Kolanu ke'echad, everyone together, ba'ar panecha, with the light of your face. Right? We ask the Rebbe Shalom, bless us with the light of your face. Ki bi'ar panecha, because with the light of your face, nasata lanu, Hashem Elokeinu, you gave us two things. Right? Tairas chayim, v'yavas chesed. Okay? We say, Rebbe Shalom, bless us again with the light of your face, because one time you blessed us with the light of your face. And what did you give us when you blessed us with the light of your face? Two things. Taras Chaim, Avas Chesed. So I understand what it means that God gave us Taras Chaim. We stood at Har Sinai, right? We said Nasa v'Nishma, and God gave us His Torah. When did God ever give us Avas Chesed? When did that ever happen? What does that mean, right? We say this 3 times a day. Or twice a day. Right? We say it every day. Hashem, you gave us Taras Chaim v'Avas Chesed. When did Hashem ever give us Avas Chesed? Says the Chafetz Chaim that when Hashem took Klal Yisrael and we stood at Har Sinai, you know what happened? Hashem opened up the heavens and we saw all the way up to the Kisei HaKavod. Hashem opened up all the Madurei Mata. We saw what the world stands on. And we learned 2 very important lessons. Number 1, when Klal Yisrael had this, imagine, the sky is like a curtain. You don't know what's going on Shemayim. But at Matan Torah, God opened up the heavens. We saw the inner workings of the Bria. You open up your watch, you see all the gadgets and all the, what are the things that turn? The gears. You see how the Bria turns. And Hashem opened up the heavens and we saw, number 1, that the Torah is a Taras Chaim. What does that mean? That if a moment would go by in this world that no one was learning Torah, the world would cease to exist, right? Like Hashem said, Vayerev, Vayevoiker, Yom HaShishi. The world was not stable until the 6th day of Sivan. In other words, right? Hashem said, if you accept the Torah good, ve'imlav, sham teik furaschem. The world cannot exist without Torah. And when Hashem gave us the Torah, we saw the inner workings of creation, and we realized that the Torah is a Taras Chaim. It's like the heart of the universe. That pumps the vitality in the universe. Pump, pump. Every moment we learn, the world exists. If there would be no learning, the world would cease to exist. Says the Chafetz Chaim, Klal Yisrael learned another important lesson also. You know what they learned? They looked into the Shemayim and they saw it's Olam Chesed Yibana. That the world stands on Hashem's Chesed. And if Hashem would run the world b'midas hadin, nothing could have kiyam. Nothing could have existence. If Hashem would deal with any malach, with any bria, with any human being, b'midas hadin, nothing could stand. And Klal Yisrael saw Chesed Hashem Mala Haaretz. And they developed such an ahava for the midah of chesed because they realized that without chesed the world cannot exist. So it was at Matan Torah, it was at Maimed Har Sinai. Klal Yisrael saw two things. Ki biyar panecha nasat alenu Hashem Elokeinu. What were we blessed with? That we understood this is a Torah's Chaim. And number two, we were given ahavas chesed. So we could explain based on this very beautifully that the reason why we have a minhag to lay in Megillas Ros on Shavuos is because Shavuos is not just the Yom Tif of Kabbalas HaTorah, it's the Yom Tif of Maimed Har Sinai. So if you want to remember Maimed Har Sinai, it's not enough just to stay up all night and learn Torah. There is another lesson of Maimed Har Sinai. The first lesson was Ki biyar panech nasat Torah's Chayim. But what about the second lesson? V'avas chesed. So therefore, perhaps that is why Chazal enacted the minhag of learning Megillas Ros on Shavuos, so that we don't forget about the second critical lesson that we learned at Maimed Har Sinai. Okay, we move on. We move on to the second part of the Shiur. Fasten your seatbelts, okay? Chazal have told us that the reason for Megillas Ros is to teach me the schar of chesed. And we know Megillas Ros is full of chesed. You have the chesed, that Ros. By the way, the learning today should be Zechus Refuah Shlema for Rus, Bas Ana Refuah Shlema. We know that the chesed that Rus did for her mother-in-law, the chesed that Boaz did for Rus, the chesed that Rus and Boaz both did, they didn't want Machlon's name to be disappeared. Okay, let's take a close look at one of the examples of chesed that are mentioned in Megillas Ros. Okay, take a look. If you have Chumashim, if you have a Megillah in front of you, if you want to pass down some Chumashim. Oh. Okay. We're good. Okay. So we have in Perek Beis Pasuk Yudalid. Perek Beis Pasuk Yudalid. So Naomi and Rus are returning from the fields of Moav, and Naomi tells Rus we have this relative who's, by the way, his name was Boaz. He had another name, Ivtzan. Ivtzan was the Shofet, he was the Gadol Hadar. And Naomi tells Rus, why don't you go to him? Maybe he'll do you a favor. Maybe he'll give you something to eat. So you take a look in Perek Beis, Pasuk Yudalid. What? Perek Beis, Pasuk Yudalid. Vayomer la Boaz liyes ha'ochel. Boaz tells her at mealtime, Goishi haloim. Right? Come here. V'achalt min alechem. Eat from the bread. V'tavalt pitech v'chametz. Dip your bread in the salt. V'ateshev mitzad ha'koitzim. She sat beside the harvesters. Vayitzpat la kali. He gave her some toasted grain. V'atoichal. She ate. V'atispa. She was satisfied. V'atoisar. And she had leftover. Okay? What does it mean? Vayitzpat la kali. He gave her some toasted grain. Look at number 9, it's underlined. Vayitzpat la kali, kalil zeir mishtei etzba oisav. He sprinkled a little bit with his 2 fingers. Okay? In other words, how much did he give her to eat? He stuck his fingers into the plate and he sprinkled her a few pieces of toasted grain. Wow. Agroisa bal chesed. Right, what a big bal chesed. Imagine, invite someone to your house. Come over for lunch, they come in, they smell the cholent. You stick your hand in the bowl and you sprinkle them 2 beans. Very big chesed. It's a good thing we have Sefer Rus, to teach me the schar of the goyim lechasadim. Now, by the way, it would be a halbatzar if Boaz was an ordinary guy, but he's the Gadol Hadar. This is the chesed of the Gadol Hadar. He sticks his hand on the plate and he sprinkles. Imagine, you invite someone to your house, so you take out, some farina, and you stick your hands in and you sprinkle some food. This is the chesed of the Gadol Hadar. Now we got it. Okay. Now Rabbi say it's even more difficult, because Boaz was not just giving a relative a few pieces of toasted grain. Because the pasuk says, when Boaz sees Rus, he asks, Lemi hanar hazos? Who is this? Look at Rashi. Rashi says, what do you mean, who is this? Boaz is Gadol Hadar. He's asking about a woman? Is that proper? Says Rashi, V'chidarko shel Boaz lishol b'noshim. Was it the derech of Boaz to ask about a woman? Rather, Rashi says, Ela divrei tznios v'chachma rabba. He saw her modesty. He saw her wisdom. He saw that she knew the halachos of leket, that she only picked up 2 pieces of fallen grain and not 3. He saw how she bent down in a very modest way, not bent over, but in a very dignified, modest way. And he was interested in her, because Chazal tell us that on that day Boaz's wife passed away. And in fact, Chazal tell us, as Nami and Rus were coming into the city, the entire city was going out to bury the wife of Boaz. And Boaz sees her. And Boaz realizes he has a mitzvah to marry her, because although the Ramban says the mitzvah of Yibum is only to marry the deceased brother's wife, nevertheless, Boaz was a relative. It was a mitzvah for him to marry her. And he was interested in her for the purpose of Shidduchim. So this is the chesed of the Gadol Hadar. And he's interested in marrying her. He wants to marry her. And this, imagine, you go out on the first date, lahavdil, and you tell her, come to the restaurant, and you order for yourself, a big hamburger and some French fries. Oh, you want some? No problem. You stick your hand on the burger, you flick her some 2 pieces. That's what Chazal are saying. Vayitzba la kali. Chazal say, Vayitzba kalil ze'er mishtei etzva'isa. And not only that, not only was he interested in her for Shidduchim, he told her that he's interested in her for Shidduchim. The Gemara says in Shabbos, Boaz tells her, at mealtime, come close. Says the Gemara, that word haloim, that's a magical word. Amar Rebbe Lazar, Remez Ramazla, he was giving her a hint. Asida malchus beis David latzeis mimcha. Kings are going to come from you, Mimech, thank you. D'chsiv be haloim, because he uses the word Goishi Halam Shenemar Vayovay HaMelech David Vayishel Lefnei Hashem Vayomer Mi Anochi Adoni Hashem Umi Basically Yaviyasin Ad Haloim. Haloim is an expression used by David HaMelech, and in fact, that's why by Moshe Rabbeinu Hashem tells Moshe, Al Tikrav Haloim. Chazal derived from there, Moshe wanted Malchus. Hashem said, don't go there. Al Tikrav Haloim. Haloim is a Lashon HaMalucha. So Boaz is telling Rus, kings are going to come from you. Now I have a question. How in the world are kings going to come from Rus if Rus is a convert and Boaz is the one who started from Yehuda? He's saying, hint, hint, kings are going to come from you through me. That's what he's telling her. So on the one hand, Megillas Rus is written to teach me the schar of those who do chesed. So this is the schar, this is the chesed of the Gadol Hadar to somebody he's interested in, and somebody who he tells is interested. I mean, she's not going to be interested in him after that, right? Yeah, here. Take some. And not only that, I know some people, they have cold feet when it comes to Shidduchim. When is the next time Boaz sees her? At the end of the harvest, 3 months later, he doesn't talk to her, he doesn't look at her, he doesn't have any dealings with her. What happened? Right? First, maybe she ran away.
You let her think about it.
What?
You let her think about it.
I mean, this is the chesed of the Gadol Hadar. The poor, right? She has no food for anything for Shabbos. You would think, send packages, something. This is the chesed of the Gadol Hadar to someone who's interested in. And then he's interested, he tells her, and then he doesn't look at her, he doesn't say a word to her. So Chazal say behind her back, he tells his workers, when she's not looking, drop a lot of leket and shikha. Right? Yeah, behind her back. But I mean, that's the chesed you do to a poor relative. You have a poor relative, you send them checks every week, you send them Shabbos packages, right? You invite him over. No, none of that. He doesn't look at her, he doesn't talk to her, he doesn't say a word to her, he doesn't even give her anything, not a penny. The only thing he gives her in 3 months is basically about a dime's worth of food. 2, right? So he opens up his grain, he says, here. Wow, this is real chesed. Beautiful chesed.
But he got married to her even if his wife was still alive. I mean,
yeah, he could have, but his wife happened to die. What? Right. But it happens to be on that very day his wife died. His wife died. Okay. Now, so in order to understand this, I'm going to tell you over a very big chiddush from the Rogotchover, guy.
Buried in Vienna.
No, he's not buried. He's buried in Vinsk. It's a big machloek. It's a big the president. They had a Matan Torah and they passed him.
Okay, we'll see. Wherever he's buried, as we're saying this over, it's Sivsaisav Doivavais Bekever. Wherever it is. Okay, here's the question.
Happens a lot.
Machloin and Kilyain. They leave Eretz Yisrael and they go to Moav and they marry Rus and Arpa. Were they Megayer, Rus and Arpa before they married them? Did they marry Goyim, or did they first convert them?
They must have been straight.
Right, again, now, Machlon and Kilyain were not ordinary people. They were the 2 Gedolei Hadar. In fact, the Zayar says, Shnei Gedolei Hadar Haya. They were the 2 Gedolei Hadar. So, presumably, they converted them first. However, look at number 12. Taisvis and Masechta Ksubis says explicitly that they married them as Goyim. Look in Taisvis, look at number 12. Lavda, right? The Gemara says like this. The Gemara talks about when a Bachar marries a Basula, you have 7 days of Shever Bachas. How about when an Almoin marries an Almana?
3.
Less. So the Gemara asks, Boyaz, Almoin Shanasa Almana Hava. Boyaz, who lost his wife, was an Almoin who married Rus, who was an Almana. Says Taisus, no, this is not precise. Rus was not an Almana. What do you mean? But Machloin died. Yeah, but you're only an Almana if you were married. If you were never married, you're not an Almana. Says Taisus, Lav Dafka Almana. Rus was not an Almana. Dechshanises LaMachloin Haisa Nachris. When Rus married Machloin, Rus was a Shiktzah. So why are we calling her an Almana? Oh, because she was a Ba'ula. She wasn't a Basula anymore. Taisvis says clearly that Machloin violated a lav in the Torah. The Gadol Hadar violated a lav in the Torah and married a Shiktzah. Look in the Targum.
What does that mean, married a Shiktzah?
He had a formal relation with a non-Jewish woman. He married a Shiktzah. There's no Kedushin, is not Taifis, right? Right.
They made it official before she...
What? No, I mean, in other words...
The city hall and...
Yeah, they did it.
Whatever. The Isser of marrying a Shiksa, however that is performed, whether it's the Bia, whether it's the formal relationship, but in fact, look in the Targum, right? What happened to Machlon and Kilyain when they left Eretz Yisrael? They died. Why did they die? Says the Targum. You know why they died? Because they married Goyim. Says Targum. Because they violated the decree of Hashem. And they married Goyim. Their days were cut short. And they both died. You hear this? Taisus, Targum, they married Goyim. What does Rashi say? The same thing. Remember, Naomi's trying to convince Rus and Naomi to go back. Go back. What are you waiting for? You think I'm going to have another child, Naomi tells Rus? You think I'm going to have another boy and you're going to marry him? By the time, who says I'll even get married? And even get married, who said I'll have a baby? And even have a baby, by the time he grows up, it's not going to work out. So Rashi asks, why is Rus saying that I'm too old to have another baby? And if she would be young enough to have another baby, what? Rus could marry him? That is called Eishes Achiv Shaloi Haya Ba'olamai, which means the following. We know there's a mitzvah of Yibam. So if you have 2 brothers, and one of the brothers, their wife dies, the second brother marries the deceased brother's wife. Right, without children. But, what if a man dies without children, and there's a wife, right, an almana, and then a brother is born after the first brother died, that brother is not allowed to perform Yibum Midai, so it's called Eishes Achiv Shalai Haya Ba'ilamai. Right? We darshan Ki Yeshru Achim Yachtav. They have to be together in the world, not Eishes Achiv Shalai Ba'ilamai. Says Rashi, why is Naomi telling Rus, I'm too old to have a baby? No! Even if she would have a baby, that baby would never be allowed to marry Rus, because that's Eishes Achiv Shalai Ba'ilamai. Says Rashi, it's not Eishes Achiv Shalai Ba'ilamai. Why? There's no Yibum over here. Rus was never married to Machlon in the first place. So therefore, if Rus would have another child, that boy would not be Rus's brother-in-law. Rus was never had any relation to Naomi or to Machlon. Says Rashi, Ki zakantim hiyos li'ish. I'm too old to get married. She'en aselai. V'oiled banim. V'tinasu lahem. That you should marry them. But what do you mean? They would be asur to you? Says Rashi, they wouldn't be asur to you. She'enam asurim lachem. They would not be asur to you. Ve'enechem asuris lahem. And you would not be asur to them. Mishum eishon v'lamai. She'ena zakuk liyibum. Why? Lefi shaloi hayu lemachlain v'kilyon kedushin mahem. Machlain and Kilyon were not married to Rus and Arpa. Shenach riyos hayu. They were goyim. V'loinis gairu, they never converted.
So in that case, how was Boaz a goel? There was no relation.
Good question.
Good question.
We're going to have to deal with that. Okay? So on the one hand, we have the Shita of Tosfos, the Shita of Targum, the Shita of Rashi, that the two Gedolei Hadar committed the unimaginable sin, they intermarried. However, does everyone agree with this? No. The Zohar says the following words. It's not on the sheet. It says the Zohar. Chas v'shalom, machloin v'kilyon shnei Gedolei Hadar nasu oisam. Chas v'shalom. To say two Gedolei Hadar married Goyim? Ela niskairu. It must be they were converted. Says the Ibn Ezra, V'lo yitachen sheyikchu machlan v'kilyon elu hanashim ad sheniskairu. It is impossible to say that Machlan and Kilyon married them before they converted.
What did they do?
What?
So God blessed us.
Okay, we have to deal with that.
They left their Israel.
And Rabbi say one final thing is the Rambam writes the following. The Rambam says that if you live in Eretz Yisrael, you're not allowed to leave unless you want to get married, or you need to make a living, or business. Okay. What about if there's a hunger? Says the Rambam. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to leave. But it's still not midas chasidus to leave. How do I know, says the Rambam, even if there's a hunger, it's not midas chasidus to leave Eretz Yisrael? Because look what happened to Machlon v'Kilyon. They left Eretz Yisrael in famine, and look what happened to them. They died. So therefore the Rambam says, although it's technically permitted to leave the land of Israel if there's a famine, it's not considered pious. I have a question.
That's also because they're the Gedolim.
I have a question for you. What does the Rambam hold about this issue? Did Machlon and Kilyon marry Goyim, or did they marry Yidden? What would you say?
Yeah.
Obviously the Rambam holds that Machlon and Kilyon did not marry Goyim. Because if Machlon and Kilyon married Goyim, what's the Rambam saying? Oh, you know why Machlon and Kilyon died? Because they didn't fulfill the Midas Chasidus of staying in Eretz Yisrael even during famine. The Rambam should have said much more pashut. The reason why Machlon and Kilyon died is like the Targum says, they married Goyim. It must be the Rambam holds like the Zohar, the Rambam holds like the Ibn Ezra, that the reason why Machlon and Kilyon died is because they left Eretz Yisrael and they never married Goyim, they married Yidden. Okay? So we have a major machlekes over here. Rashi, Tosfos, Targum, they all say Machlon and Kilyon married Goyim. On the other hand, the Zohar HaKadosh, the Ibn Ezra, the Rambam, they say Machlon and Kilyon married Jews. Okay. So we have a machlekes like many other machlekes. However, both shitos are impossible to understand. Both shitos are very difficult. Rashi, Tosfos, the Targum, they married Goyim. Two Gedolei Hadar married Goyim. I mean, the Gedolim in those days were greater than the Gedolim today, right? How? I mean, how can you say such a thing? The two Gedolei Hadar married Goyim? This doesn't make sense. Another thing is, they married Goyim. So when did they convert? Right? Boaz certainly was not marrying a guy. So when did they convert? So we know, it's famous, it's Gemara in Yavamis, and it's a Rashi on Megillas Rus, that from the conversation between Rus and Naomi, we learn out Dinei Geros, right? What does Rus tell Naomi? Rus says, Kol asher telchi elech, wherever you go, I'll go. From here we learn out that when a ger comes to convert, we tell them, Miktsas mitzvos kalos, miktsas mitzvos chamros. We start telling them about certain mitzvos. So Rus told Naomi, wherever you go, I'll go. That must have meant that Naomi told Rus, you sure you want to be a Yid? You know, we have Tchum Shabbos. You're not going to be able to, just leave the city. So Rus said, no. Asher telchi elech. Wherever you go, I'll go. And then Naomi tells Rus, you sure you want to be a Yid? Yichud is Asur. Right? So Rus says, no. Ba'asher talini alin. Wherever you sleep, I'll sleep. Then, what else does Naomi tells Rus, we're separate from all the other umayas with 613 mitzvos. So Rus says, no problem. Amech ami, your nation is my nation. Rus tells Naomi, Eloikayach Eloikai. It must be. Naomi told Rus, you can't, you don't want to be a Yid. You're not going to be able to bow down to your Getchkus anymore. So from the conversation between Naomi and Rus, we learn out what? Dinei Geros. What? Since when can a woman convert anybody? In order to do conversion, you need Bezdin. You need to call Rabbi Steinberg. He'll get his Bezdin, right? And he'll convert you. Since when could a woman, by herself, on a road, on the road, the crossroads between Moab and Eretz Yisrael, in the course of conversation, you sure you want to do this? Don't you know about Tchum? Very nice, Naomi is a big lamdin. She's not a Bezdin, she's not a Talmud Chacham, she has no authority to convert. So if you're going to say like Rashi and Tosfos and the Targum, that Machan v'Kilyon, marry them as Goyim, so who converted them? Naomi? And how could the Gemara in Yavamis learn out the laws of Geros from Naomi's conversation with Rus? Naomi's not a Bezdin. Another problem is, if Rus married Machan v'Kilyon when they were Goyim, why does the Megillah call Naomi Chamoisa, Rus's mother-in-law? She's not her mother-in-law. There's no relation. There's no relation at all. So you say, this is Tanakh over here. We're not just calling it because that's what she called him, Like I call this, Aunt Matilda, even though we're not related. So the Navi calls her Chamoisa, the mother-in-law. If she's not a mother-in-law, she's not a mother-in-law. And also, you asked before, Boaz, somebody asked, if Rus did not convert, then what in the world is Boaz doing, marrying Rus? And what right did he have to the physical possessions? Why was Boaz the Goyal? Geula is a certain mitzvah, and you have to meet certain halachic requirements. How is Boaz the Goyal? Boaz not the Goyal. Boaz is not related to this person. Boaz has no rights to Machlon's possessions. There's no relation. Rus was never married. So again, if you're going to say like Tosfos, like the Targum, like Rashi, we have 4 questions. Number 1, how could they marry Goyim? They were Gedolei Hadar. How can Naomi convert them? Naomi wasn't a Bezdin. Why does the Megillah keep on calling her the mother-in-law? And what was Boaz doing as the Goyal? He's not the Goyal. Okay. Elamai what? We're going to take the side of the Zohar and the Rambam and the Ibn Ezra that they did convert? That's even more shver. You know why? What does Naomi tell Rus and Arpa?
Sending him back.
Leichna, shoivna. Go back. Go back to your family. Go back to your idols. Go back to your treif. Go back to your arayas. Go back. That's what you do. You tell Yidden. They're converts. They were Jews. What's she sending them back for?
Rejected 3 times.
What?
They rejected 3 times as part of the...
No, but did they convert or did they not convert? If they converted, why would Naomi right? Again, they married them 10 years before. They were married in Stema of 10. So if they converted 10 years before, what right does Naomi say, go back to your gods, right? Look in the Lashon, look in Parak Aleph. It says over here, El Amma v'el Elokeha. Go back to your gods. Go back to your gods. They're Jews. They're Jews. She has no right to, right? Instead of Kirav Rechaikim, it's, Richuk Kroivim. What is this? Go back. Get lost. I have a question for you. Who was the son of Arpa?
Goliath.
Goliath, right? The big the jolly green giant, the big giant? I have a question. According to the Zohar, that Arpa was a Yid. Guess what Goliath was? A Jew, the Jewish giant. Goliath was a Jew? He was a Yid? I mean, I don't have a right that he's not a Yid, but it sure doesn't sound like it that, that's not what they taught us in the Cheder, that he was a Yid.
His father definitely was a Jew.
But the mother, Arpa was a Jew.
David wouldn't kill another Jew.
Also, according to the Zohar, that the father was a Plishti, but if Arpa converted,
But they were Moabi.
So
the father was a Plishti, maybe. I don't know. You tell me. Also, according to the Zohar, that Machlon and Kohen converted them before they married. So why is the Gemara in Yevamos and Rashi learning out Dinei Geros from Nami's conversation with Rus? You can't convert a Jew, right? You could convert anyone but a Jew. So if they were already converting, why are we learning out the laws of Geros from Nami's conversation with Rus? Okay? So we come to an amazing chiddush of the Rogotchover. Listen to this. The Rambam tells us in Hilchos Isurei Bia, number 17. The Rambam says, he's talking about Shimshon. When Shimshon married certain women, the Rambam says on the third line, look at this. Elasayt hadavar kachu. Here's the secret. Here's the secret. This is what we do when someone comes to convert. Sheha mitzvah hanachona. The correct mitzvah. Kishayavai hager ay hagiyaris lehiskayir. When a convert comes to convert, Boidkin acharav, we investigate. One of four things. We investigate four things. Shema biglau mamain sheyito. Maybe they're converting for the motivation of money. Oy bishvil srara. Maybe if they become a Jew, they'll become the vice president in the shul or something. Sheyiskola. Oy mibnei apachad bali kanas ladas. Or maybe somebody's threatening them to convert. Or maybe they're converting to get married. There are four possible things that we need to investigate when we accept Gerim. Four possible ulterior motives. Number one, money. Maybe they're anticipating a big business deal. That's why they're converting. Number two, power. Number three, they're afraid of something. Maybe like in the times of David HaMelech, the Jews were powerful. And number four, they're converting to get married. Says the Rambam, but what if we suspect that in fact they're converting for one of these four reasons? Does that mean the Gerus is no good? No! But then what? Says the Rambam, we wait. Ma yeh ba'achrisa. What is going to be in the end? Says the Rambam. Look in the next underlined part. Anyone who converts for any of the empty things in the world, is not a righteous convert. However, the afal pk, nevertheless, hayu geirim harbe misgeirim b'mei David. Many converts converted in the times of David. Ushlomo b'bnei had yoitos, before ordinary bezdin. Okay, so they converted, and they may have an ulterior motive. So is it a good gerus or is it not a good gerus? We have to see what will be in the end. We have to see if they're really sincere. Let's see what's going to happen when maybe their motivation falls away. If they're going to stick with it, then Huvra davar lamafreya, it was a good gerus from the beginning. If they're going to throw it away, it must mean it was not a good gerus to begin with. Says the Rambam. V'haya bezdin hagadol chayshishin lahem. They were chayshish for the gerus. Loy doichin oisam. They would not push them away. Achar shetavlu. But we don't bring them close. We don't push them away. We don't bring them close. So here what happens, says the Rogotchover, we'll read inside in a few moments. Machlain and Kilyain, they come to Mayav. There is no question, like the Zohar says. Machlain and Kilyain converted Rus and Arpa. However, there was a major motivation for Rus and Arpa to marry Machlon and Kilyon. Machlon and Kilyon were the two Gedolei Hadar. They were from Malchus Yehuda. They were the most prestigious Jews. They were princesses, but they had something to gain from marrying them. So although they converted, is the Gerus a good Gerus? Well, wait and see if the Gerus is a good Gerus. We have to see. Ma yiyeh acharisam, like the Rambam says. Lo doichin oisam, v'lo mekarven oisam, ad shetira acharisam. So Naomi sees Rus. She sees Arpa. They were married to the two prestigious husbands, but now they're dead. Are they going to be sincere? Or are they not going to be sincere? So Naomi says, nah, go back. Go back to your gods. You go back to your gods. You were never a Jew to begin with. Go back to your family. Go back to, right? They came from the kings of Maya. They came from Bethlehem. Go back. Arpa says, gives her the kiss of goodbye, and she goes back. Huvra davar lamafreya. Retroactively, Arpa was never a Giyores. She goes and marries some bum and has Goliath. Goliath is a goy she'en kamayu.
Very big goy.
Arpa was never a Yidina. She showed that her Gerus was not good to begin with. Arpa was never a Yid. Goliath was never a Yid.
What if Arpa would have had a child in the meantime?
So if at the end, again, we have to see Matiyah Achrisa. If at the end of the day we see she's not sincere, she only did it to marry, so then there was never a Gerus to begin with. But what about Rus? So Naomi says, go back, go back, go back. So Rus says, no. Bashar telchi elech, bashar talini olin, amechami b'shameh kaver. So Rus is demonstrating that no, maybe she wants to stick with it.
She's a real girl.
But Boaz is a smart guy. Boaz is a brilliant guy. And he understands that maybe, even though Rus seems to be sincere, but she knows that she has a rich relative in Beis Lechem Yehuda named Boaz, who's the Gadol Hadar, who's a wealthy man, who she can anticipate that he's going to marry her and provide for her for the rest of her life. So maybe if Boaz marries her then, there will always be the Ma'ararim and the Choshishin and the Mefakbikim, people to question and challenge that maybe the only reason her Gerus and the only reason she was sincere is why? She knew she could marry the Gadol Hadar who would take care of her. So what does Boaz do to her? Nothing at all. She says, oh, you want some chesed? Here. Get lost. You're getting nothing from me. I'm not marrying you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Yeah, don't expect anything from me. Don't think I'm not interested. I'm not looking at you. He sees her. He gives her nothing. He promises nothing. She has nothing to anticipate from him. This way, she doesn't look at him for 3 months. He doesn't look at her for 3 months. He wants to see, like the Rambam says, Ad shetira achrisam. Will she maintain to her sincerity and remain a Giyores despite the fact that she has no money in Eretz Yisrael and no one's going to marry her? So says the Rogotchover. This is exactly what Boaz tells Rus. Take a look on your sheets in number 19. Finally, after Rus, for 3 months, she's picking up the leket, she's picking up the shikha, with no promises of anything, of marriage, no promises of money from Boaz. And finally, Naomi tells Rus, now's the chance, right? And like Chazal tell us, the Megillah tells us, she lies by his feet. And finally, Boaz tells Rus, Vayan Boaz vayomer la, hu gad li. It was told to me, Kol asher asis eschem osech. Everything you did to your mother-in-law, acharei mois ishech, after your husband died. Vatazvi avich v'imech, you left your father and your mother, ve'eretz moiladetech, your birthplace. Vatelchi, and you went el am asher lo yadata t'mal shilsham, to a nation that you did not know. Says the Rogotchover, Boaz is telling Rus the entire Rambam that we mentioned. Boaz tells Rus, you know I am going to marry you now. Number 1, Vatazvi avich v'imech. Excuse me. Acharei mois ishech. You didn't convert for marriage. You know why? Because your husband's dead. Acharei mois ishech. You were sincere even after your husband died. The reason of Ishus has fallen away. You didn't convert for marriage because your husband is dead. And you didn't convert for kavod because you came from the king of Mayav. You left your father and mother. Obviously you didn't convert for srara. because you left your family. You didn't convert for money because you left your wealthy family to come to people who are not promising you any money. And you didn't convert because you were afraid of anything, because you had nothing to be afraid of, because you had no idea where you were going. You weren't afraid to become a ger because you came to a people that were not, you had no idea who they were. So says the Rogotchover, he is machriah, like both opinions. When Machloin and Kilyoin married Rus and Arpa, certainly they converted them. The only thing was, it was a suspicious gerus. It's a gerus we have to wait and see what will be ba'acharisa. So Arpa goes back. She shows the gerus was not good to begin with. She has a child, Goliath, he's a guy. Rus demonstrates that she did not convert for ulterior motives, and her gerus was sincere, and hence, Boaz, finally, after 3 months in the beginning, he gives her nothing. Vayitzba lakali, he gives her a few parcels of grain. Behind her back? As long as she doesn't know where it's coming from, I could give her everything in the world. Take a look at number 18, the words of the Rogotchover. This is brought down actually in the writings of Rabbi Gedal Yashar and the Ar Gedal Yahu. He quotes from the Tzafnas Paneach. Look at number 18. It's explained in the Zayar, Sharus vi Arpa nisgairu. Rus and Arpa converted. Ela shahaya chisaron b'hagerus shalhem. There was something lacking in their gerus. Shenisgairu machmas emas baleyan. Because they converted either out of fear of their husbands, or l'shem ishos, or for marriage. Umevar hatzafnas paneach. And the Rogotchover explains, Ki begerus l'shem ishos, hagerus taloi v'oimed. When one converts for marriage, the gerus is suspended. If afterwards they accept the gerus in truth, therefore the Rogotchover explains, Rus converts afterwards wholeheartedly. That's how the Gemara Yevamos learns out Dine gerus from Nami. Nami wasn't converting Rus. She was just confirming that the original gerus, right? She was authenticating the gerus. So Rus v'kibla alas all Torah mitzvos oz hagerus and eskal shem ishus k'shenisis l'machlon ha'isa gerus l'mafreya. Says the Zaya, that's why his name was Machlon, because eventually, after Rus demonstrated that her gerus was good, he had mechila for marrying her. Machlon.
Oh, yeah.
Until then, maybe he married a guy. Until the end of Rus's life, we don't know what's going to be with Machlon in Olam HaEmes. After she demonstrates that she was sincere, he's Machlon. But what happened to Kilyon? Kilyon is a lesson of Kilayon. Lemafreya, after Arpa returns back to Steimayav, it turns out Kilyon married a Goya, and he had a complete destruction to his entire career. That's how the Rogotchover explains the episode of Machlon and Kilyon. So based on this, perhaps we could suggest,
how do you explain Boaz's original comment to her, she halom?
Come forward.
He was offering her to be mother of Malchus. That's a motivation.
So, HaKodesh, no?
it may just mean he was maramis to her, but it doesn't mean she got the... I don't know if she knew the Gzeira Shava. I don't know.
She was the emes and told me about the Tal Chok, she was.
So it's important to this. Why do they die? They died because...
Maybe they left Eretz Yisrael. Right, you say like the Rambam, they left because they left Eretz Yisrael.
I may be wrong, but I thought once somebody converts, you're not supposed to challenge them anymore.
That's if they convert wholeheartedly, but if somebody converts with an obvious ulterior motive, so then...
Nowadays, do we invalidate Gerus at all? Does it ever happen?
If the original Gerus was not done properly...
The original Gerus was done properly.
If the original Gerus was done properly and there was no reason to suspect that they're converting insincerely, and then later on they turn away, so...
we're still having to makar them.
Yeah.
They can't turn away.
Let us just bring up a few more points. The Gemara in Masechta Yevamos on Daf Mem Chesam Beis says the following. Says the Gemara comments on a very interesting phenomenon, that Gerim in general have a very hard life. The Gemara says, why do Gerim have a hard life? So the Gemara says, no, because when they were goyim, they didn't keep the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. We don't know what they did. They probably did not act properly when they were goyim. So Rabbi Yossi asks, no, how could that be? Because once they convert, Ger Sheneskayer, Kekatan Shenoi Ladami, they're like a newborn creation, they're like a new being. They're not responsible. That was a previous lifetime. That's not them. So therefore Rabbi Yossi says, why do Gerim have a hard life? Because they don't know all the halachas, or because they don't do mitzvahs out of Ava. Concludes the Gemara, Acherim Oimrim. Others say, you know why Gerim have a hard life? Mipnei sheshahu atzman lihikanes tachas kanfei hashchina. What took so long? You became a ger? Should have become a ger sooner. Why'd you wait? And where do we learn this from? Amar Rabbi Avo, v'yitem Rabbi Chanina. Ma'ikra. What's the proof that gerim are punished because they should have become gerim sooner? Because Bayaz tells Rus, Yishalim Hashem Palech, God should give you your reward. Utihi maskortech shlema, and your recompense should be complete. Asher bas lachsois, that you came right away. So Rabbi Yossi says Gerim have a hard life because they didn't keep the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. To which Rabbi Yossi asks, no, that can't be. Ger sheneskayer kekatan shenol adam. Says the Gemara, why do Gerim have a hard life? Why did it take so long? They should have become Jews sooner.
But why do we hold it against them then, still? Why does the fact to become Ger?
So Rav Yaakov Emden asks, they should have become Yidden sooner? There's no chiyuv for a guy to become a ger. In fact, if they want to become a ger, we basically tell them to get lost. So, and yet, the Gemara is saying that goyim are punished because they should have become a ger sooner? Doesn't make sense. So maybe based on this Rogotchover, we could say the following. And another question is, why would they be held accountable? Maybe that's what you're asking?
Yeah.
Why should they be held accountable for not becoming a ger sheneskayer kekatan shenol adami? Before they were a guy, whatever they did as a guy is not held against them.
No, for new creation now.
So maybe we could say like this. It's true that there is no obligation for a guy to become a ger. And if they don't become a ger soon enough, they're not punished. That was a different life, a previous lifetime. But what happens if a ger comes and says, I want to be a ger, but we have certain hesitations, and we're choshesh, maybe they have ulterior motives, and they convert, and they're in like this limbo land. Then, once they've accepted upon themselves the oil of Torah, but we suspect they have ulterior motives, maybe then, once they've made this dedication, they are required to show the sincerity of the Geiros. Otherwise, what are they doing? Nishtaher, like Rus. In other words, there's no obligation to become a ger. But once you convert, now you're obligated to demonstrate as quickly as possible that you mean business. Because once you convert, since the longer you take, the longer it will take us to know that you're a convert. And once you do show your sincerity, then l'mafreya, you were a convert from the very beginning. So maybe that is the taina on Gerim. Once they're ready to take the plunge, and once they've committed themselves and have accepted upon themselves, that's something that perhaps is binding on them. Okay, let's just end off with one more segment very quickly. Okay, there's a very interesting machlokes. We started off talking about chesed. Are goyim chayiv in the mitzvah of chesed? So the Netziv writes in his, it's very interesting, when the Chavetz Chaim wrote the Sefer Avas Chesed, he went to get haskamas, to get the approbation, he went to the Netziv. The Netziv wrote a haskama on Avas Chesed, and the Netziv writes that chesed is not just a mitzvah, it's part and parcel of the human personality. Even goyim are commanded in the mitzvah of chesed. Says in Netziv, but how could that be? The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, goyim only have 7 mitzvahs. So now this is an 8th, right? Ever Menachai, Berchas Hashem, Gezela, Dinim, not to kill, not to steal.
Berchas Hashem.
Right? Avodah Zarah. And also Chesed, there should be an 8th. Says in Netziv, it's not a question. Because the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach are only commanding goyim are the things they're not allowed to do. But chesed is something that they have to do, so it's not on the list. The list, what? The list is only a negative. It's not listing things that kum v'yaseh. Because the haraya. What?
Dinim is positive.
So the Maral says dinim is only to ensure that they don't violate the other negatives. So it's also nichlal in the negatives. So the Netziv says, "I'll bring you a raya that goyim are that this is how we draw the line and what makes the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach." Because there's an opinion in the Gemara Sanhedrin that goyim are chayiv in the mitzvah pruruvu. It's not one of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. No, it doesn't. It's not on the list because the Sheva mitzvahs are only things you're not allowed to do. Pruruvu is something that you have to do. Says the Netziv, "I'll bring you a raya that goyim are chayiv in the mitzvah of chesed." Because if you look in Sefer Yecheskel, it says that why was the city of Sodom destroyed? Yad ani ve'evyoin layachzika. They didn't give tzedakah. So there's a raya that even goyim are chayiv in the midst of tzedakah. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman and the Kavitz Mamarim argues with the Netziv, and Rabbi Chanan says, no, goyim are not chayiv in tzedakah. It's not the Sheva mitzvahs. If they're not chayiv in tzedakah, what does the pasuk mean in Yecheskel that Sodom was destroyed because Yad ani ve'evyoin layachzika? Says Rabbi Chanan Avada, goyim are not chayiv in chesed. However, if Sodom would have done chesed, so Hashem would have said, Kol hamerachim ala briyos, merachim ala shamayim. If the city of Sodom would have, says Rabbi Chanan, really Sodom was destroyed because they violated the Sheva mitzvahs. But if they would have done chesed, Hashem would have dealt with them, lefnim mishur sadin, Hashem would have been meichel them for their chesed. But since they didn't do chesed, they were held accountable for not keeping the Sheva mitzvahs. So we're going to bring a raya from Sefer Rus that goyim are chayiv, that goyim are pater from chesed. What's the raya?
And three things are called the world. One of them.
But maybe that's us. That's what we have to, right?
Are called the world. Us, same world for them or not.
Torah, Torah. So listen to it. The Vilna Gaon says that why was her name Rus? Because beforehand she was chayiv in 7 mitzvahs. And now that she became a Giores, her name was Rus. Rus is Begematria 606. 606. Hence, that's why her name was Rus. Because beforehand she only had 7 mitzvahs. And now how many mitzvahs were added? 606. But according to the Netziv, her name shouldn't be Rus. Her name should be something else. 605. Because she didn't have 7 mitzvahs before. She had 8 mitzvahs. And now only 605 mitzvahs are being added. So perhaps this is a little bit of a raya to Rabbi Chanan that goyim are not commanded in chesed. But as we know in Gematrios, you could be one off. So that would be an answer for the other side. Rabbi, say have a great day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.